Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Social Work England session for Social Work Week 2025. We're joined by Geraldine Nosowska, Graham Price, and Mandy-Jayne Lace in relation to the session, which is "You Shouldn't Lose Your Home Without Advice," a co-produced campaign. Really excited to be welcoming them to this session here. I'm going to pass you now to Jerry, who will be leading this session.
Thank you very much, Gavin. So we're just going to start off by introducing ourselves. That's me, MJ, and Graham. So I'll kick off. I'm a social worker and I am an independent. I work for myself. I do various bits of social work activity around policy research and training and development, and also currently doing some practical work around safeguarding down in Cornwall, which is where I live. Go ahead, ask MJ to introduce yourself next.
Yeah, hey, I'm MJ, Mandy-Jayne Lace, and I'm a trainee social worker in the final year of my studies at Cardiff Met in Welsh Wales. I previously ran the Disabled Students Allowance Service, a SENDCO. I'm therapeutically trained, and I'm enjoying working with adults and older people, particularly those people with disabilities, and I've had quite a broad range of placements. It's been quite a lot of fun, and I'm pleased to be here
too. So we're here to talk about this campaign around older people and people in later life not losing their home without having advice from a social worker. We'll explain more about that as we go along. We're just going to start off by setting out what the aims of the session are. Some of you might have been involved in the Social Work England event last year, where we were talking about the Social Work with Older People research project, the SWAP project. We talked about that last year because it was just reporting, and it had identified some great practice around social work with older people, and also some things that we really wanted to strengthen. And we're back now a year later to talk about one of the things that we're trying to do as a result of that research. We're going to talk a bit about some of the evidence behind what we're trying to do. We're going to talk about a particular campaign that we've got, and we're going to talk about actions that we'd really like you and others to take. The major aim of this session today is to raise awareness of what social workers and social work can do to support people in later life, and particularly when there's like a huge life change happening for them, and to really think about how we can challenge ageism in our day-to-day practice and our personal lives as well, and to take some action to do that. So what we should start off by hearing is one of Graham's amazing poems. He's going to recite a few of them as we go through today. Graham is one of our experts by experience. He's an older person. He's part of our special interest group on social work and ageing. He's a bit of a legend, and he's a part of the service user groups at Birmingham University and City of Birmingham University, and also involved in the British Association of Social Workers as one of their experts by experience too. And the first one is setting out the importance of the Social Work with Older People research project. Since we've still not quite got him audible to us, I'm going to read it out. It won't be anything like as good, but imagine that Graham himself was saying this, and then you'll hear him in a bit. So at the end of the Social Work with Older People project, Graham, who was one of the experts by experience who was part of that project, wrote a poem called "Beginning to Live Again." Growing old need not be a curse, but firstly, ageism is the devil to slay. We found a social worker to be preferred, of course, made real only if public awareness is in play. The SWAP research project sought to say how it is, with 10 social workers and 17 older people in the frame, in two communities of wide disparity, but with common happenings. Aged between 65 and 99, the observed were not cases, they were known by name. Awareness was at rock bottom. Few knew what a social worker was or did. In the main, their experience and well-being was determined by an unlikely sage. Now hope abounds. The knowledge gleaned has raised the lid. And building on this research with social work impact, we may all look forward to a better old age. The research project really showed the positive difference that social work can make to people in later life, but we need to challenge ageism. Ageism is the devil to slay, as Graham wrote, to enable people to have access to social work when they need it. So I'm going to hand over to, I'm going to say a little bit more about the special interest group. It feels like I'm talking quite a lot, but that's because I'm having to cover Graham's bit a little. Graham and Mandy-Jayne and I are all part of the British Association of Social Workers Special Interest Group on social work and ageing. And that was set up directly as a result of that social work with older people project, and directly inspired by that poem from Graham, that ageism is the devil to slay. It's a social work voice for policy and for practice change, and it brings social workers and older people together, and some of them are the same people. Some social workers have been social workers for a long time and have a lot of wisdom from practice and from life. The aim of the group is firstly to challenge ageism, because without that, nothing improves in later life, and that includes social work and social care. But we also want to advocate specifically for social work itself in later life. And that includes advocating for better responses to improve well-being for older people. It includes promoting policy and practice that recognises the range and diversity of experiences in later life and responds to those. And it includes promoting social work in education and professional development, and sharing research about the best ways to respond and evidence from lived experience as well. So this special interest group took on the challenge from the Social Work with Older People project of there being a real gap for people in later life who are facing huge life challenges. And one of the biggest life-changing decisions that people might make in later life is about the potential to give up their home to go into a care home. Around about 124,000 older people go into care homes each year in England, let alone the whole UK. Most of them don't see a social worker, but legal and practical advice, the kind of advice that the Social Work with Older People project showed social workers can give, is absolutely vital in that kind of situation. And social workers have the relational and communication skills to provide advice, reassurance and guidance. They have the knowledge, the practical and legal knowledge, and the knowledge of ageing and the life course. And they also have the hands-on kind of skills to get on and support people using their values of empowerment and anti-discriminatory practice. Of those 124,000 older people who are going into care homes each year, around half have to pay the full cost in England. So that's again a massive need for advice and support around the finances. Of those half who are going in as full fee payers, around 78% are people who are living in care homes for people with dementia. So they're people who probably have some struggles with capacity and decision making. And what we're seeing then is people who maybe don't get access to the advice that they need going into care homes and not necessarily even being able to completely grasp all the ramifications of that, and having to pay a large amount of money for that. The government's impact assessment around providing assessments and advice to everyone, including self-funders, estimated that around 10% of people who go into care homes each year don't need to be there. So lack of good advice leads to really significant issues and potential problems. Firstly, there's a real worry and anxiety about what would be best to do. Care homes might be perfect for some people and not the right choice for others. People might feel rushed or pushed into a decision that they wouldn't otherwise make. People might not have the chance to have a really good transition and to recognise the loss and change that's occurring. And also, if it isn't the right decision and people run out of money and the local authority needs to then take over, they may not be able to do that. And within our special interest group, we have people who know from professional and personal practice that this is a really stressful time and has a real impact on people and their families. And we also know from the social work with older people research that not having access to that kind of professional advice can cause a lot of stress and worry. So we've created a campaign, and I'm going to hand over to MJ to say a bit about it.
Thank you. And it's great that we're all here, even if we can't hear Graham yet. I'm sure that'll come good. So thank you, Jerry. So our campaign was co-developed with the special interest group, and it says that excuse me, no older person should have to give up the place that they call home because of social care needs without having access to that professional advice and support from an experienced and named social worker. Social workers have a professional qualification, as has been said, and that includes social care law. They know how to uphold rights, including when people might lack that mental capacity to make a decision. They can assess risk and focus on people's wishes at the same time and what matters to them, so they can stay in control of what happens. The campaign has to balance the reality of not enough social workers with the evidence from the campaign that older people benefit from and value continuity of social work support, particularly during those major life changes. But nothing will change if we don't ask for and expect that improvement. Now, I'm sorry, Jerry, but unless Graham can unmute, we're going to have to lean right into you again, because I know that Graham's got a poem just about this, hasn't he?
He has, and I do actually have a recording of it, so I'm going to attempt to play that, and we'll see if that will work. This hasn't been practiced, so
yeah, fantastic. Well, let's just do it.
Let's just give it a whirl. So, hopefully you can see that. Yay!
Hello everyone.
I can.
I've written this poem to deal with to try and redress the balance of access to a social worker. Some parts of our community get one as of right, and others do not. This poem is called Name Please, and it speaks for itself. Each year, there's 126,000 older people like me needing someone to advise on their next move. A care home, perhaps, or to stay rooted here, it might be. Legal complexities stalk the choice, but someone has much to prove. For starters, what do you know and what's your name? A trusted confidant is my need. A named social worker fits that bill. Younger adults get one. Why not the elderly? Is ageism in the frame? Cost considerations are perplexing. To stay put, often the least costly pill. BASW are seeking to make a change of mission, addressing what needs to be fixed for the older person's social care by making assessment commonplace, the right position, and reminding us statute allows for social care for all to be fair. The lobbying subgroup has set up its practice, producing a briefing paper to inform the campaign, raising awareness of examples of social injustice, fueling the named social worker policy aim. Thank you.
Yay, that worked. Fantastic. So I think it's back to you, MJ, to talk a bit about what this might look like in practice.
Okay. Exactly. So we're going to have an example, I believe. Am I right? Let me just check I've got the right thing. Yes. Yes, I have. We're going on to the slide of Raymond, I think.
And it looks like Graham is with us as well.
Graham, good afternoon.
Yeah, I've just become unmuted. It tells.
Graham, we've just had the pleasure of hearing a recording of your poem, but you'll be able to do the last one properly for us.
Thank you. And I heard the record. I could hear the recording, but thank you very much. So yes, I'm sorry I didn't do it myself, but thank you very much.
Would you mind just taking a moment, since we've now got you back, just to say why the campaign for a named social worker for older people is important to you?
It's important to me because I am an older person. I'm 2 months short of 85 myself. And apart from which, social workers had a big part, it peppered my life really, from infancy as a cared for child, and then fostered with a view to adoption unhappily, and then learning I was going to lose my sight through a gene I'd inherited from an unknown parent, and then caring for my late wife, Maura, who had Parkinson's and extreme dementia. So it's had a big part in my life. And then coupled with or supplemented really by my engagement in what I'll call community activism since mid-teenage, really enabled me to take part as an expert in the expert advisory group for the SWAP program or research project. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, as we all did, because it was so meaningful. We wished it could continue, because it needs to continue, because we really do need to make a difference for older people. They are not sufficiently thought about in terms of social provision in this land. But thank you.
Back to you, MJ, for us to hear the example of Raymond. And this is where we'll open the chat.
Yeah, it's great. It's great that we're all here together. We can see each other and hear each other, and it's great to see everyone on screen. So this slide, is about Raymond. So this example, it's based on real life examples that are in our social work with older people research project. So Graham's been living alone in his flat with support from his daughter Grace. And gradually, Raymond started experiencing more and more problems with his thinking and his remembering. Alongside this, though, he had some falls and a few short admissions to hospital. Over time, he was accessing more help at home from both care workers and from the family. He was happy to see his daughter and grandchildren, to chat and do what others prompted him to do. However, when he was left to himself, Raymond didn't remember to do things like eat and drink. Eventually, it got to a point where Raymond found it impossible to stand without help. A social worker from the local authority, Wes, met with Raymond and Grace at home. He spoke with the GP, the community nurse, and his occupational therapy colleague. Wes put together a picture of what Raymond needed and of the benefits and risks of staying at home or of moving into a care home. Wes identified that Raymond didn't have the capacity to weigh up the information and make a decision about the care he needed. So Grace made it on his behalf, using her lasting power of attorney. Raymond's feelings about what sort of home he wanted and the things and people that mattered to him were central to those conversations. His views were asked for and understood as far as was possible. Grace found Wes's input vital and said, "He gave me all the information." Potential room in a care home was identified by Grace, and Raymond went to visit. This went quite well, and so plans were made for Raymond to move. Wes coordinated the move with Grace. This included the essential elements of ensuring the care home staff knew what mattered to Raymond and setting up his room as he would like it. Also, getting appropriate funding from the local authority, as Raymond couldn't pay the full amount, although he would be paying significantly towards that cost. After Raymond moved, Wes went to see him and review how things were going. He said, "I need to see for myself that it's working." So I've got a question for everyone. What difference or differences did the social worker make? And could people pop those thoughts in the chat? Jerry's going to read out the themes that come up, if any. I'm sure there will be lots. And I think Graham and I get to make comments about that. So I hope that was helpful. Jerry, over to you.
Yeah, so please do. Thank you so much, Leanne, for getting us underway with the first comment in the chat. But if people could just be putting things in, and then I'll summarise them so that you don't all have to keep reading everything. And then we'll have a bit of a conversation about what the importance of a social work role when we're facing that kind of life decision that Raymond was facing. So it's really interesting to see these comments, because many of them reflect the interviews that we did in the Social Work with Older People research project, where with older people and with carers and families about what difference the social worker made, and the sorts of things that came up from people who are experiencing social work about what matters to them. So there's four really big areas that I've picked up on from this. The first is therapeutic support. Second one is practical support. The third is empowerment, and the fourth is knowledge. So I'm going to take each of those in turn. And MJ and Graham, hopefully you'll be able to comment. I'm going to start with the therapeutic support because it always jumps out really fast and really strongly. So some of the things that people have put, things like reassurance, sharing responsibility, having a trusted person, really lovely phrase, someone to lean on, taking worries away, kind of a range of things that people have talked about. So MJ, I'll come to you first about that sort of therapeutic relational support. How does the campaign relate to that idea of a named social worker?
Yeah, well, I think, thank you, Jerry. I think that my experience of requiring support has been that when I can relate to the person that's with me, when they've got a name, when I've got a name, when I know who to call, when I know who's coming, or at least who's going to be at the end of the phone, then I can really examine what's going on for me. And I think the campaign relates to having someone alongside an individual, not necessarily resolving those problems themselves, but actually helping that human to go through, think through, be through, imagine a future that's different, make those big decisions alongside someone. So if that person has a name, I just think it's much easier to be relational. And I think therapeutic in interaction is about listening. So it's difficult to listen to people if we don't know what they're called, I find, and difficult to know who to talk to. So I think it comes down to it being as basic as that for me.
Thanks, MJ. And Graham, you put in your poem, firstly, who are you? What's your name? So can you say a bit about why you've emphasised that so much?
Well, I emphasise because for what Mandy just said, it's this business of stabilising, having confidence that the person, and in fact, I go on to say, a trusted confidant is my need, and that is what it is, and that trust can only come from a build of relationship. And that's why a named social worker is so important. But to go back to the therapeutic element wholly here, not related to any other element here, the fact is that we have to feel that things are working well for us for them to work well for us. They don't work well for us in spite of. They work well for us because we feel happy about them. Therefore, can take them on board and maybe make some of the difficult judgments we have to make about our own self-care that we do have to make, but that comes from feeling comfortable in the situation we find ourselves.
Thanks, Graham. And I'm going to stick with you for a minute because the second big theme was around empowerment, and that includes a lot of things around listening to Raymond's wishes and feelings, thinking about what matters to him, working in a person-centered and kind of individual way with him. When we talked quite a bit in the special interest group about this campaign not saying necessarily that you wouldn't want to go into a care home, or that you should stay at home, or that there should be like a particular that's the one thing is best, one size fits all, but that it has to be really personal. I wondered if you could say a bit about that, about getting it right for a person, how we do that.
Because as we say, I mean, the value of the poem, it rather succinctly pulls together the very threads that cause us, if you like, to be concerned or to be part of our influencing process. And again, it comes back to this comfort area, but also the complexity area, because at the point when you're considering what you're going to do, you need some advice, really, or you at least need someone who's got some training, able to unpick some of the complexities. In that poem again, Name Please, we talk about both the legal complexities of deciding what best to do, but then the cost considerations on what's best to do. Because let's face it, we've all got financial limits, but the interesting area here is the very fact that it's person orientated. What works best for that person? And as a Raymond issue that Mandy has spoken about already today, sometimes that person needs someone to give them the confidence to move. They may have to make difficult decisions, and those decisions may not always be the most happy ones, but they are the best ones in the circumstance. And providing that person feels that their real concerns are taken on board in this process, they will, if you like, engage in that and decide to take the appropriate action.
Thanks, Graham. So MJ, I wanted to talk to you about the area of knowledge. So there's quite a lot of things that come through in the themes around advocacy, explaining the process, legal literacy, understanding about mental capacity and funding, which Graham has just mentioned. He's just mentioned the sort of legal literacy element, and you're kind of currently studying all of this, I guess. So why is a social worker helpful in terms of their knowledge?
Well, you see, that's the thing. If anyone thinks that doing social work's easy, they want to come try it. I think that the legal duty is the thing that really supports things, because everything is built from policy and law. So we create the law, then we create the policy, then we create the practice. So the practice relates directly to the policy and the law that was made. But if you don't know what the law is, and you're not sure how that falls into policy, and then what they do with that policy in terms of the projects, the funding streams and the possibilities, and where they lay between, NHS and social services, and who does what and what benefit you're entitled to. If you can't tie it all together and be an independent voice for that person, the one that's actually stepping up and stepping out, metaphorically in my terms, then I think it's very difficult to pull all the threads, as Graham's alluded to, of what a life worth living looks like, and how somebody can say safe, but also, supported, having a life that they deem is worth living. We stay longer if we're happier. So I think that's how we should work it. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think that's why a social worker is important. They have a legal duty. There's more than that, but they know they've got the knowledge, and then everything cascades from that, because they can pin it all onto that. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Graham.
I said, one of the phrases I sometimes use when I'm speaking to people is, I want to be alive when I die. And I think this is such an important concept to have, that we must have a life when we die. Let's be honest here, we can't all have that. But we must strive for that. We must strive to ensure people are empowered sufficiently to have the most valuable life they can have for as long as they have life.
And the final, that's so true. The final area that I wanted to talk about is the practical stuff, which doesn't necessarily come through so strongly when you look at the theory of social work, but comes through really strongly whenever you ask people what they're doing as social workers. And people have picked up on it really strongly here around what Wes was doing, going and checking that the room was going to be okay, coordinating the move, making sure that things were set up for Raymond, talking to the staff about who he is and what he does. Now, this is where there's a lot of struggle, I think, for social work because of the time that people have to do things. This is a example that is based on real life, a real life example from the Social Work with Older People research project, and also drawing on experience from people in the special interest group. So we've talked a lot in the special interest group about being hands-on kind of social workers and having the scope to do that. I just wondered if MJ or Graham, if you've got any thoughts about that kind of real activist, practical side of social work.
I'm happy to go if you wish. Look, I think, yeah, I think that I think it's easier said than done, right? I think that we can put it in all the courses in all the world and all the CPD in all the world, but it's not an easy thing when the built environment in its first instance is limiting for people with disabilities, and as we get older, potentially our mobility may decrease potentially. So if the built environment starts that way, it's not going to be easy for anyone. But I think that that it's the right way to approach it. The challenge we've got is about weighing up pros and cons, your own pros and cons, as Graham said. Everyone has an individual experience and they deserve the opportunity to speak about what's going on, what they've got, what the options might be, and what decisions they might make with somebody that might have a clue of what all that means. And I think that taking a team approach means that maybe we can save some money. And I also think if we learn about each other, be that occupational therapy or physio or whatever, that we can learn a little about each other and start working more as a team that are connected to each other. That really does draw a person-centered approach, I think, and maybe one that might save us some money, help us not have all the delays, reduce our frustration, and support people where it matters. But it's hard, right? I've said at the beginning, it's not easy. I don't think it's an easy thing. I think that's quite idealistic, so I get it.
Yeah, there are constraints, aren't there? But it's trying to make that practical difference. Yeah, Graham.
Yeah. I think Mandy has hit it perfectly on the head, really. If we look at the Raymond, I call it story. I mean, it is a true story because it's one of the pen. What do we call them? Pen portraits of the 17 people within the frame. We had 10 social workers and 17 older people in the frame, and pen portraits were made of the 17 older people, and Raymond was one of them. And because what it indicated was that the success of that was it was co-produced in the sense of that is that the Wes went along to the doctor, got the occupational therapist and Wes and Grace, his daughter, to engage in the process of determining what was best for Raymond, with Raymond's view and Raymond, as far as he could, having impact upon that decision. But what was true here was the relationship built between Raymond, Wes and Grace, which enabled the thing to work out satisfactorily for Raymond. Raymond ended up having a really good experience and outcome, but really only because that relationship build was possible. And that's what came from the name social worker. There was a social worker assigned to Raymond, in a sense became Raymond's friend and able to give him what he needed, or at least make it possible for him to have what was needed. And so, I mean, that's the example of where the confidence and the ability of the social worker, the skill of the social worker, and the fact that they have a relationship built with the person they're supporting works well.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for your comments in the chat. I just want to finish with pulling out one of them, highlighting one of them. Somebody wrote that it's a difficult time made easier, which I think is a really good summary of what a lot of social work is. So what you've heard so far is the aim of our campaign, which is that no older person should have to give up the place that they call home or face the potential to give up the place that they call home without expert advice from an experienced named social worker. You've heard about the importance of that person being alongside and what they can offer in terms of the therapeutic relationship, the empowerment, the knowledge, and the practical kind of hands-on support. We've heard that embodied in the example of Raymond, which is, as we said, it's a composite example based on the research project and experience from people in the special interest group. And for our campaign, we've produced 4 examples altogether. So Raymond is one of them. We have another example of somebody successfully staying at home with support from a social worker. We have an example of someone who's in a care home temporarily and is unable to come home, and we have someone who doesn't have access to a named social worker and finds themselves kind of drifting into living in a care home without it really being a person-centered or empowered decision. We are also working on a briefing to say why this is so important, drawing on some of that evidence that we've covered, and asking people to get involved and take action. And the major thing, the first thing we want to do is to raise awareness that so many older people who face this huge life change don't get access to a social worker in the way that we would never imagine for children. If a young person was potentially having to give up their home and place they call home, they would have access to a social worker. They would have that advice. And that is not to say that we don't have wonderful advice colleagues, voluntary agency colleagues, social care colleagues, but it was also drawing on the Social Work with Older People research project, which really highlights the value of the social work education and experience and expertise alongside all of our other colleagues and our multidisciplinary teams. So the first thing is we want people to really be aware that older people, carers and families can benefit from social work advice and support when they're considering a move from their home, because again, the research showed that many older people don't realise that social work could be for them, that it is a potential source of support and advice. Second to that, of course, is the fact, as we've talked about, that there's a lot of constraints on access to that social work. There's not enough people who do social work to cover the need, and there's also not enough people who specialise in working with older people. So we really want to encourage people to go into that area of social work. We want to encourage people to stay in that area of social work through being recognised and appreciated for the work that they do. And through being supported to do that. We're going to be talking to employers about how do they respond to people who are potentially going to lose their home. Who do those people get to speak to? Where do social workers come into that? What scope is there to try to bring social work into the frame there? And one of the sites that was part of the Social Work with Older People research project, which is Walsall Local Authority, is looking at how they can try to have more continuity of a social worker for people facing major life changes. So that's a follow-on project from the research project itself. So it's raising awareness for social workers ourselves about how important this is. It's raising awareness for older people, carers and families about the fact that social work could be for you as well in later life. And then it's starting to work with employers and policymakers to really try and make social work available when it's crucial in these major life-changing moments. So over to you again, MJ.
Thank you. So I think we're going to move the slide on. The research found, the project found that, there we are, that, thank you, that that often the social worker, we are the last person on their side, on that individual side. We need social workers to be there for people who face that huge life change. of potentially leaving the place that they call home forever. They need someone alongside who can uphold those rights and wishes and empower them to make the choice that works for them. So we hope that you will think about this in your practice and in your organisation. To support that, Graham, I think you have a live poem for us where we can hear you and see you live. I think it's fantastic. I'll hand it over to you.
Very much. And is that my cue to recite this poem? I think it is, Mandy.
I think it is. I hope so.
Thank you. Great. Good, good. Well, if I can just say, this poem actually came. Everyone here today, I'm sure, will know tomorrow is World Social Work Day. And because I'm involved with Birmingham City University and we're celebrating it tomorrow, I was asked to look at what the International Federation for Social Work were promoting as a theme for Social Work Day this year, and it was, and wait for it, intergenerational solidarity enhancing the well-being of all. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's a bit not very personal. So indeed, I thought, well, let's write something that's a little bit more personal than that. And so this poem, in fact, celebrates the World Social Work Day, and it is about intergenerational sharing, and it's headed All for All. Everyone needs care, but where does it go? To the elder? To the minor? No, it's to us all. Throughout everyone's life, support needs ebb and flow. Intergenerational sharing, for sure, makes the best call on talent, on compassion. Let's help it grow. Happy World Social Work Day tomorrow, and thank you for listening to me.
Thanks, everyone. So I think it's over to see if we've picked up any questions or comments along the way. Graham, you won't realise this, but there's lots of hearts and claps and thumbs up coming your way.
Thank you. Oh, no, I would not know that, but thank you. Thanks, Jerry, for sharing. I'm so sorry. Well, it's nothing to do with me, but I'm sorry the technology has made such a mess of this for me. Well, but thank you for managing it so well.
That's okay. So I'm going to ask our colleagues at Social Work England if there's any comments or questions that we should pick up on.
Well, at this stage, we don't seem to have any additional comments or questions other than the ones that came in earlier, other than the amazing number of hearts and claps and thumbs ups that we've just had since the end of the presentation. So no, I think you must have been, but you are getting more thanks coming through from people. I can see them coming through as we speak.
I did just want to mention one thing that came up in the chat, which is about a link to the British Association of Social Workers capabilities resource, which is around social work with older people. So that's something that came out of the Social Work with Older People project, and it does have examples of social work with older people that are drawn directly from the project. The example that we use today, as I said, isn't one of those exactly. It's got elements of it, and it's also got a composite from other experiences. And I've just put in the chat the website for Social Work with Older People Research, and you can go there and see all of the resources that we've got. So that's the research report and the policy briefing that we did with BASW. There's resources for practice from Research and Practice and from BASW as well, and there's videos and an animation and lots of different things, so please do use those.
Now I can see one question, it's quite a specific one here, asking about when the briefing will be released, so this can be shared with colleagues.
Yeah, so we are working with, again, with BASW, with the British Association of Social Workers, around getting the one-page briefing together that will say more about this campaign and really highlight the actions we want to take. So this is actually the first time that we've publicly kind of introduced it as an idea. It's quite exciting to do that just before World Social Work Day. And we're looking at who the best people and most important people are to target to kind of really make a difference with this, because we know that there are loads and loads of initiatives to try to help social work and make things work better for people. And there's also just huge pressures on the profession. So we want to really kind of get things to the right place. So yeah, as soon as we have that, it will come out through the BASW Bulletin, and we'd love to share it through Social Work England as well.
Thank you so much. Well, listen, I want to say thank you to you all today, to Jerry, to MJ, and to Graham. I've really enjoyed it, and I felt really good being part of it today. I just to say to all the social workers in the room, these events are open to absolutely anybody, but we obviously get a lot of social workers who attend and also who watch the recordings, and we are encouraging people to use this as part of their continuing professional development. Certainly the kind of things that I think people might pick out, which I've certainly picked out, are things like empowerment, that personalization, the importance of advocacy, you talked about sometimes the social worker is the last person who will be on their side, I think is the way it was described. And I think, Graham, you talked about wanting to have had a life. I think I'm misquoting ever so slightly, but when at the point that someone dies. And I think all of these things fit into this need for good social work to help in terms of empowerment and personalization. And I think if we think about our standards and the requirement to uphold that and people's rights, I think you've definitely spoken to that today. So thank you so much, both personally and on behalf of the team here at Social Work England. We have finished just a few minutes earlier, so people will have some time back there. But thank you again, and everybody who's here. Remember, we have a number of other sessions taking place across the week, so please do sign up to those. And thank you again for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you. Thanks.